Chapter 1074. Lu Ming pondered for a while and realized that it was not useful to him. Just as he was about to leave. Get lost! Suddenly, a loud roar could be heard. A young man in white with a long sword on his back came from the sky. A terrifying sword aura emanated from his body and pressed down on the crowd. Wu Tsang. Sky Martial Sword Faction, Wu Tsang. Many people were shocked. Sky Martial Sword Faction was extremely prosperous. It was one of the top factions in the Middle Continent. Not many factions could compare to it. In this generation, the Sky Martial Sword sect was also filled with geniuses. Just in terms of grade 2 geniuses alone, there were already 2 of them. Wu Qingkong and Wu Tsang. Wu Qingkong was the number 1 elite of Sky Martial Sword Faction, while Wu Tsang was ranked 2nd. Although he was ranked 2nd, he was as strong as Yin Bupo and Junyu. With 2 elite elites in this generation, Sky Martial Sword Faction's reputation was at its peak. Get lost! I want this place! Wu Tsang looked down from above. Many people gritted their teeth. This place was huge. Wu Tsang could have chosen a place to comprehend, but he chased them away. Although they were angry, they did not dare to voice it out. They could only leave. Many people had gained some insights, but they had no choice but to stop and leave this place. You're still not leaving? Wu Tsang looked at Lu Ming with a piercing gaze. Lu Ming looked calm. He glanced at Wu Tsang and left. This place was useless to him. He had already planned to leave, so there was no need to fight with Wu Tsang. Sky Martial Sword Faction is really overbearing. Keep it down. Many elites have entered Sky Martial Sword Faction. The previous generation's number 1 elite is also here. Although his talent is not as good as Wu Tsang and Wu Qingkong, he has cultivated for more than 10 years. His combat strength is terrifying. We'd better not offend them. Some people discussed in low voices as they left the place. Lu Ming headed north and soon appeared 10,000 miles away. Caw! A bird's cry resounded through the sky. A huge eagle soared through the sky, covering the sky and covering the sun. What a powerful aura! This was also a powerful beast. It was the overlord of this secret realm. The giant eagle flew to a cliff in front of them and landed. Lu Ming realized that there was a nest on the cliff. That is, from a distance, Lu Ming discovered that there was a strange aura on the cliff. There were vague marks on it that looked like a human figure. There are traces left behind by supreme experts. I wonder if they will be of any use to me. Lu Ming carefully approached the eagle's nest and waited patiently. This wait lasted for an entire day. The next day, the giant eagle let out a long cry, spread its wings, and flew away from its nest. After the giant eagle left, Lu Ming rushed down the cliff to take a closer look. There was really a figure carved on the cliff. This figure seemed to be launching an attack. Boom! Boom! Upon closer inspection, the figure seemed to have moved. A terrifying killing intent exploded out, enveloping Lu Ming. Kill! With an explosive roar, that figure sent a palm strike towards Lu Ming. A terrifying killing intent enveloped Lu Ming, causing his entire body to turn cold. He couldn't even muster up the will to resist. The palm strike directly landed on his body. Lu Ming was shocked. He took several steps back, only to realize that everything was an illusion. So powerful! Lu Ming let out a long breath. He was a little shocked, but also a little excited. This was a martial technique that was extremely powerful. It contained killing intent and could even affect one's mind. Lu Ming activated his 3rd bloodline and could borrow the powerful slaughter intent. This martial technique was just right for Lu Ming. Let's try to comprehend it here and see if I can comprehend this martial technique. Lu Ming stepped forward and observed carefully. Lu Ming guarded his heart and remained motionless. Whoosh! This time, it wasn't a palm strike. A sword appeared in the figure's hand, and it slashed out. Lu Ming remained motionless, allowing the battle sword to slash past him. As expected, the battle sword was like an illusion. After slashing past, the figure executed another move. This time, it turned into a saber. Whoosh! Whoosh! This figure moved freely, executing all kinds of attacks. The weapon in its hand was also unpredictable. What a mysterious martial technique! Lu Ming looked at it for a while and finally figured out something. This martial technique didn't have a fixed move. In other words, the move was only the surface. The key was the intent. Once one comprehended the intent of this martial technique, any weapon would be able to unleash great power. This was a killing move that was specially created to kill people. Its power was extremely strong. Lu Ming sat cross-legged in the air, carefully comprehending and studying. In the evening, a cry resounded in the sky. The giant eagle had returned. Lu Ming left and sat cross-legged not far away to continue comprehending. After the giant eagle left the next day, Lu Ming returned to the cliff and continued to comprehend. "Brat, get lost!" Suddenly, a loud roar was heard, interrupting Lu Ming's comprehension. Lu Ming's eyes flashed coldly as he turned around. Wu Cong, it was that person again. Now, he had his eyes on this cliff. "Get lost!" A cold shout came from Lu Ming. Wu Cong was stunned. He obviously didn't expect Lu Ming to tell him to get lost. Then, Wu Cong's eyes revealed a trace of killing intent as he stared at Lu Ming. "Brat, do you know who you are talking to? If you say the wrong thing, you will pay with your life. Get lost!" Lu Ming's voice was even colder when he said the second word. "You are courting death." Wu Cong shouted coldly as his sword chi surged. He slashed out with his palm and a terrifying sword radiance slashed down at Lu Ming. Lu Ming casually waved his hand and deflected the sword radiance. He got up and stepped towards Wu Cong. "You have some skills, but you are wrong to be so arrogant in front of me." Wu Cong shouted as he unsheathed his sword. The sword's cry shook the sky. Swoosh! The sword cut through the void, creating a terrifying crack in space. Roar roar roar, a dragon's roar came from Lu Ming's body as the dragon power erupted. Lu Ming's body was covered in purple light. With a palm strike, Wu Cong's sword chi was shattered. Lu Ming didn't stop and continued towards Wu Cong. Wu Cong was shocked and in disbelief. Lu Ming's combat strength was far beyond his imagination. Where did this expert come from? Without time to think, Wu Cong quickly retreated. A bloodline sword appeared above his head. It was a level 8 divine grade bloodline. He performed bloodline fusion and turned into a battle sword. He slashed out a shocking sword radiance, wanting to split Lu Ming in half. Clang! Lu Ming clenched his fist and activated the suppressing hell skill. He struck out with a terrifying force on the sword radiance. The battle sword shook violently and almost collapsed as it was sent flying far away. Swoosh! Lu Ming stepped forward and threw out a punch. The battle sword shook violently and was sent flying tens of thousands of meters away, splitting two mountains. Run, run! Wu Cong was horrified. He controlled the battle sword and turned to run. Lu Ming stepped into the air and chased after Wu Cong. Wu Cong turned into a sword radiance and flew out a few hundred miles in an instant. However, Lu Ming was even faster. Wu Cong was almost scared out of his wits. Stop! I am a disciple of the Sky Martial Sword Sect. If you dare to attack me again, you will be an enemy of the Sky Martial Sword Sect. Chapter 1075. Lu Ming sneered and continued to step forward. He clenched his fist and punched out. There was no doubt that Lu Ming had unleashed the power of 7 dragons and activated the heaven-suppressing art. Coupled with the 5-color concept, his power was terrifying. Clang! Another punch landed on the sword. This time, Wu Cong could not resist it anymore. The sword exploded, revealing his true body. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fled frantically. Oh my God, who is that? It looks like Wutsang. Yes, it's him. He's actually running away and being chased. Who's so powerful? To be able to chase after Wutsang. Isn't that the weakling? He's chasing after Wutsang. He's so terrifying. He just defeated Wutsang's bloodline fusion with one punch. What weakling? He's clearly a rare genius with unparalleled combat strength. He's too strong. No wonder he could pass the heavenly market cave. Not far away, 5 or 6 people passed by. When they saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. Wutsang did not know Lu Ming because he was not there when he went through the heavenly market cave. He only arrived after the secret manual of the saint's mansion was opened. However, those who passed by recognized Lu Ming. Back then, they also thought that Lu Ming was lucky to pass the heavenly market cave. Now, they were really shocked and thought that they were dreaming. Lu Ming used the 9-dragon sky-stomping steps and was astonishingly fast. He caught up with Wutsang in a few moments and punched out again. No! Wutsang roared and tried his best to resist, but half of his body was still shattered by the punch. Bang! Then, Lu Ming stomped his foot. Wutsang screamed and was torn into pieces. Another second-class prodigy had been killed. However, just like Xueluozi, after Wutsang was killed, another ray of white light shrouded him. Not far away, his body actually condensed again. He gave Lu Ming a resentful look, then with a tremor, he disappeared without a trace. Life talismans again. Lu Ming frowned. These second-class geniuses all had the potential to become rulers. The major forces valued them very much and spent a lot of money to buy life talismans from the World Academy. Almost all the second-class prodigies had one. Second-class geniuses were too important. There was hope for them to become rulers. An Emperor realm expert could make a force become an overlord force, allowing it to prosper for 10,000 to 20,000 years. Compared to a supreme being, who knew how many times more important. What these overlord powers hoped for the most was to have a successor. If there was no successor and no new emperor was born, then the overlord power would quickly weaken. For example, the Medicine King Valley and the Talisman Puppets sect. In the history of the Divine Wilderness, there had been countless overlord factions, but how many of them had been able to prosper and pass down their legacies? Very few. Many overlord forces eventually weakened because there were no emperors among the later generations. One could imagine how highly those overlord forces valued second-class geniuses. In the distance, the few of them sucked in a breath of cold air and broke out in cold sweat. Lu Ming was too ruthless. A second-grade genius was killed just like that. Fortunately, they had the life talisman. Otherwise, the Sky Martial Sword sect would go crazy. Lu Ming glanced at the few of them and ignored them. He returned to the cliff and continued to comprehend the killing move. The World Academy. Outside the Universe Jade Annulus, it was still crowded with people. High up in the sky, the Supreme sat cross-legged and waited silently. Buzz! Suddenly, a white light flashed and Wutsang appeared. Everyone's eyes turned to look at him. Wutsang, it's Wutsang. He was killed. What danger did he encounter? It seems like the secret realm is really dangerous. I wonder how many of those without life talismans died. Danger comes with opportunity. It's worth it if you can get something out of it. Many people looked at Wutsang and discussed. Wutsang, what happened? High up in the sky, one of the Sky Martial Sword sect Supremes asked. Since the Supremes asked, Wutsang did not dare to ignore them. A dark-skinned young man. He looked simple and honest, but he was extremely cunning. Wutsang did not know Lu Ming's name, so he described Lu Ming's appearance. What? Wasn't this the appearance of that trash Lu Shaoqing? It's him again. He's really a killing god. First, he killed many experts from Cold Blood Hall, Sanguinarum, and now he killed Wutsang. He's really terrifying. He killed so many geniuses consecutively. His battle strength is amazing. I'm afraid he's one of the top second-class geniuses. Many people exclaimed. Those from Cold Blood Hall looked gloomy. Sanguinarum gritted his teeth and looked terrible. Why did they have to drag them into it? On the cliff in the Saint Mansion's secret realm, Lu Ming was carefully comprehending. Every time the giant eagle returned, he would leave. The next day, when the giant eagle went out to look for food, he would go and comprehend. After 5 consecutive days, he gained a lot. This mark was not complete. It was just a kind of intent. Lu Ming comprehended 5 killing moves from this intent. Lu Ming named them the 5 killing moves. The 5 killing moves did not have a specific move. It was just a way to use the slaughter essence. In other words, without the slaughter essence, it was useless. However, when Lu Ming borrowed the power of the 3rd bloodline, he could borrow the slaughter essence. Thus, the 5 killing moves came in handy. Previously, when Lu Ming borrowed the power of the 3rd bloodline, it was just pure strength. With the 5 killing moves, it would undoubtedly be more powerful. Almost there. 5 days later, Lu Ming got up and left. This mark was not complete. Even if he continued to comprehend, he would not gain much. Lu Ming left and continued to look for opportunities. One day later, Lu Ming came to a lush mountain range. Hey, why are all the spiritual herbs along the way emptied out? Which bastard did this? Dandan ran around like a gust of wind, cursing. In this mountain range, the spirit chi was very dense. Ancient trees towered into the sky. Along the way, Dandan found dozens of pits left behind by the spiritual herbs. According to Dandan's speculation, they were all left behind by level 8 spiritual herbs. He was angry that someone had gotten to them first. They are too clean. Not even a hair is left. Dandan sighed. Lu Ming was also speechless. They had changed several positions in this mountain range, but it was still the same. There is someone in front. Suddenly, Dandan stared and climbed onto Lu Ming's shoulder. Lu Ming restrained his aura and moved forward carefully. In front of him, a figure in white clothes was walking in the air, flashing in the mountain forest. From the back, he looked very young. However, he was bald, and the top of his head was smooth and round. His movement technique was extremely fast. Like a gust of wind, he appeared in front of a spiritual herb. "My hair, good, good." The bald man murmured and then waved his sleeve. The spiritual herb left the ground and was kept by him. Could it be a Western Desert holy monk? Lu Ming was surprised. Legend had it that the Western Desert was different from other places. They cultivated Buddhism. The entire Western Desert mainly cultivated Buddhism, and there were many ancient temples. Judging from the bald man's clothes and the Buddhist chants, he was clearly a Western Desert holy monk. After keeping the spiritual herb, the Western Desert holy monk continued forward. Not long after, he came to a dark underground cave and observed carefully. Chapter 1076. In the Western Desert holy monk's hand, a round plate emitted a beam of purple light that shot into the sky. It was so shocking that it could be seen even from far away. After a while, the Western Desert holy monk put away the round plate and the beam of light disappeared. That was because there were streaks of rainbow light flashing in the distance. Someone was attracted. What is that guy trying to do? Lu Ming was hiding not far away. He had seen everything. The Western Desert holy monk put away the round plate and returned to the dark cave. He shouted, "The treasure in this cave is mine." After shouting, his figure flashed and he quickly left the cave. Soon, more than a dozen streaks of rainbow light flew over, revealing more than a dozen figures. The treasure is in the cave. Kill. We can't let others beat us to it. Get lost. It's mine. More than a dozen experts rushed into the cave. Roar. 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 In the cave, the roars of beasts were heard. The entire ground was shaking as a fierce fight broke out in the cave. That guy is using someone else to do his dirty work. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. Didn't they say that the Western Desert holy monks were kind-hearted and would help all living beings? That guy was too unreliable. Could he be a fake? I have hair, I have no hair. Buddha is merciful. That guy chanted again. In a flash, he didn't enter the cave but went in another direction. That guy is very mysterious. Let's follow him. Lu Ming quietly followed the Western Desert holy monk and came to a place dozens of miles away. There was a huge cave in that place. At that moment, Lu Ming heard a loud roar coming from the cave and then it gradually faded away. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. He finally understood that guy's motive. This cave was connected to the other cave dozens of miles away. This guy from the Western Desert was using someone else's cave to lure the ferocious beasts away. Then, he could easily enter this cave and search for treasures. That wasn't a merciful holy monk. He was clearly an unscrupulous monk. That monk looked around furtively. Only then did Lu Ming see his face. She had a baby face and was slightly chubby. Her skin was so smooth that it would make women jealous. Her skin was pink and tender, and she looked harmless to humans and animals. He looked around, then chanted the name of Buddha and rushed into the cave. This guy is really not a good person. On his shoulder, Dandan looked at him with disdain. Lu Ming curled his lips and thought, "You're about the same as him. There must be treasures in this cave. Let's go in and take a look." Lu Ming also carefully rushed into the cave. The cave was very large. After a few thousand meters, it became even more spacious, like a huge underground cavern. Faint rumbling sounds could be heard from the front. It was clear that the battle was extremely intense. I saw a few pits. There must have been some spiritual herbs growing there, but they were all dug up by that monk. What a pity! Dandan lamented. As the two of them continued forward, they realized that the underground caverns were crisscrossing. They could no longer see the monk's shadow. Lu Ming walked forward casually. Suddenly, he stopped as a purple light attracted his attention. On one of the walls, a hazy purple light was emitted. It was hazy and beautiful. Lu Ming channeled his true yuan and wiped away the rocks on the surface. A longan-sized purple crystal appeared. This is a purple flame crystal. Lu Ming was shocked, but he was overjoyed. Purple flame crystal was a precious material that was rarely seen in the world. It could be used to refine weapons or pills. It was priceless. Most importantly, purple flame crystal was one of the most important main materials for refining nirvana pills. It was a level 9 material. Lu Ming did not expect to find a purple flame crystal here. He immediately condensed his true yuan into a blade and dug out the surrounding rocks to dig out the purple flame crystal. So heavy! The longan-sized purple flame crystal weighed more than 10,000 kilograms. It was really shocking. I wonder if there are more. After Lu Ming put away the purple flame crystal, he looked around carefully. It would be great if he could find a few pieces here. Although nirvana pills were not very useful to Lu Ming, they were very useful to others. If Fatty Kong Jean had nirvana pills, he could even raise his third bloodline to level 9 divine grade. There were also his parents and disciples. In the future, when he met Xian Yanqing, Mulins, and the others, they would all be very useful. If there was a chance, Lu Ming wanted to collect the materials and refine a few cauldrons. After walking around for a while, Lu Ming discovered something else. There was purple light emitting from one of the walls. Just as Lu Ming was about to dig, a terrifying gust of wind attacked Lu Ming. Lu Ming was shocked. He turned around and threw out a palm strike. Bang! A terrifying force surged towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming could not help but take a few steps back. What a powerful force! Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Although he did not release his dragon force earlier, his vital essence was extremely strong. Coupled with the 5 types of intense and the hell-suppressing heaven skill, an ordinary martial artist at the 2nd level of spirit god would be killed by him with one palm strike. But now, he was forced to retreat. My hair! A Buddhist chant was heard. A harmless face appeared in front of Lu Ming. It was the monk. He looked very young, in his 20s. He squinted his eyes and smiled. He put his palms together and said, "Benefactor, the ferocious beasts in this cave were lured away by my friends. It's not good for you to take advantage of them like this, right?" Even though he was talking, the monk was still smiling. Lu Ming and Dandan looked at him with disdain. Those people were obviously tricked by the monk. But in the monk's mouth, they became his friends. How shameless! "Master, everyone has a share. I saw what you did just now. If this spreads out, I'm afraid it won't be good for the reputation of the Western Desert holy monk," Lu Ming said with a smile. "My hair. My Buddha is merciful. I think you've misunderstood. Monks are merciful," the baby-faced monk chanted a Buddhist chant. Roar! Before the monk could finish, a loud roar was heard. A huge lizard shining with purple flames pounced towards the monk. Buzz! A golden light shone from the monk's body. He threw out a palm and a huge golden palm print hit the purple lizard. With a boom, the lizard was shattered into pieces. Merciful? Lu Ming was tongue-tied. "My hair. My Buddha is merciful." The monk chanted a Buddhist chant again. He looked at Lu Ming and said, "Benefactor, I've taken a liking to this purple flame crystal. Why don't you give it to me?" "What if I don't?" Lu Ming said. "My hair. My Buddha, hair your sister." "I know you don't have hair." Lu Ming shouted and suddenly attacked. The dragon force in his body erupted and his strength increased. He threw a punch at Monk Wuliang. Monk Wuliang's body shone brightly. The dazzling golden light spread, making Monk Wuliang look like the reincarnation of Buddha. In addition, he had a harmless face. If Lu Ming had not seen him secretly, he would have thought that he was an enlightened monk. Boom! Chapter 1077. Boom! A terrifying explosion resounded as energy shot out in all directions. The underground cave shook violently. The rock of this underground cave was extremely hard. Perhaps it was because of the strong beasts living here. If it was an ordinary cave, it would have exploded. Even so, the entire underground cave was shaking violently. Bam! Bam! After one move, Lu Ming's body trembled as he retreated a few steps. So strong. This monk's strength is actually so terrifying. Lu Ming was shocked. At this moment, he had already unleashed his dragon force, but he was still pushed back by the other party. The golden palm print was shockingly powerful, as though it could suppress everything. It was on par with the suppressing hell skill. Lu Ming was shocked. Unscrupulous monk was also surprised. He did not expect Lu Ming to be able to receive his palm without being injured. Roar! Roar! The shaking here attracted the attention of the beasts on the other side. Loud roars could be heard. Clearly, some beasts were charging over. "I have hair. Benefactor, you are so strong. This purple flame crystal can be yours. This little monk will take his leave." Unscrupulous monk chanted Buddha's name and left with his sleeves fluttering. The Western Desert is indeed unfathomable. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. Since ancient times, the Western Desert had always been the territory of Buddhism. It had always been mysterious and powerful. Many people said that the Western Desert was second only to the Central Continent among the 5 major territories in the Divine Wilderness. Roar! 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 The thunderous roars caused the underground cave to rumble. Lu Ming did not think too much about it. He dug out the purple flame crystal and left the place in a flash. Next, Lu Ming walked around the underground cave for a while, but he did not find a third purple flame crystal. Instead, he found a few purple giant lizards, which were killed by Lu Ming. However, there was obviously a nest of giant lizards in this underground cave. Some of them were very strong. Lu Ming did not stay for long. After a while, he left the cave and flew into the distance. Hoo hoo, a gust of wind blew past. Lu Ming smiled. After obtaining 2 purple flame crystals, Lu Ming was in a good mood. There were 7 main ingredients for refining the Nirvana pill. Each of them was extremely precious and rarely appeared in the outside world. Now that he had obtained one, it could be considered an opportunity. Naturally, Lu Ming was in a good mood. Boom! A shocking explosion sounded. Up ahead, sword energy rushed into the heavens. Inscriptions flickered, and space was torn apart. There were people fighting an intense battle. Lu Ming flew over at an extremely fast speed. Using the water concept, he condensed a cloud of mist and hid within it to watch. There were a total of 4 people in the battle, and Lu Ming was quite familiar with a few of them. Sandalwood Fairy, Kong Xian, the genius of the World Academy, and Wu Qingkong of the Celestial Martial Sword Sect. Lastly, there was a burly man in his 40s who was no weaker than Wu Qingkong. The 4 of them were in a chaotic battle. However, it was clear that Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian were working together. The 2 of them were fighting against Wu Qingkong and the muscular man. The battle was extremely intense. That is, at this time, Lu Ming discovered that there was a small lake below. The lake water was clear, and in the lake, there were 3 carps swimming around. The 3 carps shone with golden light, and their bodies glowed with light. Sometimes they gathered, sometimes they scattered, and when they did, they looked like a true dragon. Dragon carp, it's actually a dragon carp. Lu Ming was shocked. Dragon carps were also a kind of supreme treasure. It was said that they were the descendants of true dragons and had the blood of true dragons in their bodies. When used to refine elixirs, they were a rare treasure medicine. Its value was even higher than that of purple flame crystals. Coincidentally, one of the 7 main ingredients for refining Nirvana elixirs was the blood of dragon carps. You want to compete with me? You're courting death. The dragon carps are mine. Wu Qingkong shouted, his murderous intent surging. Wu Qingkong, don't be too overbearing. There are 3 dragon carps. How about 1 for each of us? Sandalwood Fairy spoke. 1 for each of us. Are you qualified? All 3 of them are mine. Wu Qingkong sneered. His sword energy whistled, and cracks appeared in the space. It was extremely terrifying. The other muscular man did not speak. His body emitted a white light as he waved his hand. A sky-covering palm appeared, tearing the heavens and the earth apart. This is the great sky-splitting palm. This person should be an expert from the Ji family, an overlord force. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Among the 3 parties, Wu Qingkong's combat strength was astonishing. The muscular man from the Ji family had a profound cultivation and was not weak either. However, when Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian joined forces, their combat strength was terrifying. They were not weaker than the others. It was difficult to determine the outcome of the battle in a short period of time. Lu Ming smiled. He suddenly unleashed the 9 dragons' heaven-stomping steps and dashed toward the surface of the lake. In an instant, he appeared above the surface of the lake. With a grab, a huge vital essence hand appeared and grabbed toward the 3 dragon carps. Who is it? You're courting death. At this moment, the people in the air were shocked. Wu Qingkong even roared in anger. The 3 dragon carps were about to fall into Lu Ming's hand. However, at this moment, the 3 dragon carps glowed and turned into a ray of light. In a flash, they escaped from Lu Ming's true essence giant hand. Lu Ming was shocked. Just as he was about to use all his strength to capture them, a terrifying sword energy slashed toward Lu Ming. Helpless, Lu Ming could only turn around and punch out. Bang! The sword energy was defeated. Whoosh! Whoosh! In a flash, Wu Qingkong, the brawny man from the Ji family, Sandalwood Fairy, and Kong Xian appeared around Lu Ming. However, they did not attack immediately. Instead, they locked their auras on Lu Ming. Brat, it's you. Wu Qingkong was taken aback when he saw Lu Ming clearly. Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian were also surprised. Apparently, they had recognized Lu Ming. "Brat, to be able to block my sword attack, you must be quite capable. You must have been hiding your strength." Wu Qingkong looked coldly at Lu Ming and continued, "However, you dare to capture dragon carps under my nose. You're going to die. In the Martial Saint's secret ground, everyone has a share. Of course, I can take action when I see the treasure." Lu Ming curled his lips. "If you take action, you'll have to pay with your life." Wu Qingkong's killing intent exploded. When Lu Ming had refused to give up his spot in the marrow cleansing pool, he had already wanted to kill Lu Ming. Now, his killing intent was even stronger. Whoosh! Wu Qingkong swung his sword and a terrifying sword chi slashed at Lu Ming. It was even stronger than before. Lu Ming was fearless. He activated the suppressing hell skill and punched out with his dragon force. Boom! The heavens and the earth trembled as the energy surged. Pillars of water rose from the lake below. The 3 dragon carps flashed and dodged the energy. Bang! The sword chi dissipated. Lu Ming broke the sword chi with his fist. He stepped forward and said in a cold voice, "You're still not strong enough." Then, he punched out again. Lu Ming's fist seemed to contain the force of millions of tons. It was so terrifying that the entire space trembled. So strong. Wu Qingkong was shocked. His true essence surged and his sword hummed as he slashed out a shocking sword chi. However, it was useless. Lu Ming was like an invincible god of war. He punched out and destroyed the sword chi. He quickly approached Wu Qingkong. On the side, Sandalwood Fairy, Kong Xian, and the others were also shocked. They had never imagined that the young man who had passed the heavenly market cave by luck would be so powerful. It was too terrifying. Why do I find this person's fighting style a little familiar? Sandalwood Fairy said. I have the same feeling. Kong Xian said. Whoosh! Chapter 1078. Don't even think about it. Sandalwood Fairy shouted. She waved her hand and a few elixirs flew out. The elixirs glowed and turned into weapons that attacked the burly man from the Ji family. At the same time, Kong Xian also attacked the burly man from the Ji family. The 3 of them engaged in a fierce battle. Boom! Boom! Lu Ming was brave and invincible. He stepped on the void and punched with earth-shattering force. The void continued to explode as Wu Qingkong was forced to retreat. He was at a complete disadvantage. Finally, he let out a long roar and used bloodline fusion to turn into a battle sword. The sword chi whistled as he fought Lu Ming. To be honest, Wu Qingkong's battle strength was very strong. He was much stronger than Sanguinarum. No wonder he was called one of the strongest experts after the 5 magnates. He had the right to be arrogant. However, his cultivation was still at LV1 spiritual god. Lu Ming was never afraid of anyone at the same level. Clang! Clang! After a few consecutive punches, the battle sword was sent flying and vibrating in the air. Damn it, who are you? Wu Qingkong roared in disbelief. He could not believe that someone who appeared out of nowhere had such terrifying battle strength. Not far away, Kong Xian and the others were also shocked. Wu Qingkong was completely suppressed. It was too shocking. Who else could do this except for the 5 magnates? Rumble. At this moment, a terrifying explosion came from afar. A ray of blood light flew over at high speed. Swoosh! A burly figure appeared in the air. His eyes were like lightning. When he saw Lu Ming, his killing intent was even more shocking. Lu Shaoqing, die! With a roar, the figure punched out. The blood-red fist radiance pierced through the void and blasted toward Lu Ming. Shuefeng! Lu Ming frowned. This figure was Cold Blood Hall's #1 genius of the previous generation, Shuefeng. He did not expect Shuefeng to be here. Lu Ming punched back and collided with Xue Feng's fist radiance. His body trembled and he was forced to retreat. Xue Feng was very strong. With a level 7 divine bloodline and a LV4 spiritual god cultivation, his battle strength was terrifying. Xue Feng stepped forward with a violent aura. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Lu Ming. At this moment, Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian were dumbfounded. Lu Shaoqing. Just now, Xue Feng had called Lu Ming Lu Shaoqing. This dark-skinned young man was actually Lu Shaoqing. Sandalwood Fairy and her companion exchanged a blow with the Ji clan's burly man and retreated far away. They did not continue fighting. Xue Feng's arrival made the situation even more complicated. "Brother Lu, it's you." Sandalwood Fairy said. "Fairy, how have you been?" Lu Ming smiled. Facing Xue Feng, he remained calm. "It's really you." Kong Xian was also shocked. At that moment, Wu Qingkong retreated far away and observed from afar. "This brat offended Xue Feng, he's courting death." Wu Qingkong sneered. "Kill!" Xue Feng roared, stepped forward, and punched out. The space shattered under the blood-red fist. It was extremely terrifying. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" The third bloodline appeared, and a trace of power entered Lu Ming's body. Instantly, a terrifying killing intent emanated from Lu Ming's body, and his hair turned blood-red. Then, the third bloodline turned into a sword, which Lu Ming held in his hand and slashed out. Puff! The blood-red sword light flashed and split Xue Feng's fist in half. Is that his bloodline? Strange, why is there no chakra? Sandalwood Fairy and the others were shocked. First, they were shocked that Lu Ming had finally used his bloodline power. His combat strength had indeed increased, and he had not used his full strength before. Second, they were shocked that Lu Ming's bloodline did not have a chakra. This was unheard of. Damn it, this guy probably doesn't have a life talisman. I must find a way to kill him. When he fights Xue Feng, I'll wait for an opportunity to strike. Wu Qingkong's mind kept spinning. Xue Feng was also shocked when he saw Lu Ming's sword break his fist. The true essence in his body circulated wildly, and his aura became even more violent. Divine Blood Leopard Fist. Xue Feng's fists were like blood jade, and he constantly punched out. Fist radiance flew out, and in the process, it turned into a blood leopard and pounced on Lu Ming. This was a divine-level martial skill, and it was extremely powerful. 5 slaughter styles. Lu Ming circulated the 5 slaughter styles, and the blood-red battle sword buzzed. Sword radiance shot out, and scattered the blood leopards one after another. Slaughter mentality. Xue Feng was shocked, and at the same time, he was even more determined to kill Lu Ming. Lu Ming's talent was too shocking. He was only at the first level of Spirit God, but he could already fight with him. Bloodline appeared above his head, and in the next moment, he turned into a blood leopard, roaring and pouncing on Lu Ming. Lu Ming was fearless. He held his battle sword and fought with Xue Feng. Lu Ming's combat strength was unparalleled, and he was invincible among those at the same level. However, Xue Feng's cultivation was 3 levels higher than Lu Ming's. Moreover, he had also comprehended a divine-level martial skill, and his bloodline fusion was even more powerful. Lu Ming and Xue Feng exchanged dozens of moves, and gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. The difference between our cultivation is too great. If I use the 9 Dragons bloodline, or the Suppressing Hell Steel bloodline, and the 3rd bloodline, I might be able to fight with him. Lu Ming's mind raced. However, this result was already enough to shock everyone present to the extreme. I didn't expect Brother Lu's combat strength to be so strong. This is too shocking. Kong Xian was tongue-tied, and after a while, he said this. He was also at the first level of Spirit God, but he realized that if he fought with Lu Ming now, he would be easily killed. On the other side, the battle sword that Wu Qingkong had transformed into was also trembling in fear. If Lu Ming had used this kind of combat strength, he would not have been able to resist at all. He was too strong. That's right, even the 5 great authorities might not be as strong as him. Sandalwood Fairy sighed. Seal. In the middle of the battle, Lu Ming used the 9 seals of the God Gate, and a light gate was formed. It shone brightly and suppressed Xue Feng. For a moment, Xue Feng was actually frozen. Kill! Lu Ming took a step forward and slashed at Xue Feng's head with his sword. Roar! Xue Feng roared, and a bloody light burst out. With a bang, the light gate was shattered at the critical moment. Xue Feng continued to retreat, but he was still one step too late, and a piece of his scalp was cut off. Then, Lu Ming lifted his leg and kicked Xue Feng's stomach, sending him flying. What a pity! Lu Ming lamented in his heart. His cultivation was still not strong enough, and the gate of the seal was broken by Xue Feng's violent True Yuan. If Lu Ming's cultivation was stronger, or if he had cultivated 2 gates of the seal, it would not be so easy for Xue Feng to break it. The gate of the seal was not omnipotent. If one's cultivation was too strong, Lu Ming would not be able to seal it. Even so, Xue Feng was already shivering. He looked at Lu Ming with fear in his eyes. Just now, he was almost killed by Lu Ming's sword. What kind of secret technique is this? It's so terrifying. He was horrified. For a moment, he dared not step forward to fight with Lu Ming. Kill! This time, it was Lu Ming's turn to take the initiative. He stepped forward and attacked Xue Feng. Buzz! Chapter 1079. The Gate of Seals glowed and flew towards Xue Feng like a ray of light. Moreover, the light emitted by the Gate of Seals also had a sealing effect. Xue Feng could not escape at all. His body was enveloped by the light of the Gate of Seals and he could not help but stiffen. Swoosh! Lu Ming's body was like a flickering shadow as he rushed towards Xue Feng. The blood leopard that Xue Feng had transformed into let out a furious roar. Blood spurted out like a volcanic eruption and rushed towards the Gate of Seals. This time, Lu Ming was even faster. The blood sword pierced through the void and pierced through the blood leopard's body in an instant. Roar! The blood leopard let out a shocking roar as it broke through the Gate of Seals and clawed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's expression changed. In a hurry, he struck out with his palm and clashed with the blood leopard's claw. With a loud bang, Lu Ming's body was sent flying a few thousand meters away. His qi and blood were in turmoil and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Xue Feng's genuine yuan was too strong. The moment Lu Ming stabbed him, he broke through the Gate of Seals and launched a counterattack. However, the blood leopard that Xue Feng had transformed into was definitely not in a good state after being stabbed by Lu Ming. At this moment, he roared and did not dare to continue the battle. Instead, he turned and ran. Lu Ming did not chase after him. With his current cultivation, coupled with the 9 seals of the Divine Gate, he could indeed injure Xue Feng. However, it was almost impossible to kill him. If Xue Feng went all out, Lu Ming would not be in a good state either. In the blink of an eye, Xue Feng had disappeared. As for Wu Qingkong, he had already sneaked away before Xue Feng had escaped. As for the dragon carp, he did not dare to take it anymore. If he stayed, he would definitely be killed by Lu Ming. On the other side, the expression of the Ji family's strong man changed. In the end, he let out a long sigh and turned to leave. His combat strength was only on par with Wu Qingkong. If he continued to stay, he would only be courting death. In an instant, only Lu Ming, Sandalwood Fairy, and Kong Xian were left above the lake. Brother Lu, why did you disguise yourself? Even your aura has changed. We are suffering. Sandalwood said with a smile. There are some people that I don't want to see. Fairy, please forgive me. Lu Ming smiled. Then, Lu Ming looked at the 3 dragon carps in the lake and said, do you too also need dragon carps? It's all thanks to Brother Lu this time. Otherwise, if Xue Feng had arrived, Brother Kong and I probably wouldn't have gained anything. These 3 dragon carps naturally belong to Brother Lu. Sandalwood said. Fairy, you're too polite. I only need 2. As for the other one, you can take it. Lu Ming smiled and landed on the surface of the lake. He used the divine gate 9 seals. In a flash, the gate of seals appeared and locked the 3 dragon carps in place. Then, his Jin Yuan condensed into a giant hand and scooped up the 3 dragon carps. With a wave of his hand, 2 of the dragon carps disappeared. Lu Ming had collected them into a small lake in the mountain and river diagram. To refine the nirvana pill, he only needed the true blood of the dragon carps, not the dragon carps. Therefore, 2 dragon carps were enough, and more would not be of much use. There was no harm in giving the other one to Sandalwood Fairy. Thank you, Brother Lu. Sandalwood Fairy was overjoyed. She was an alchemist, and this dragon carp was indeed of great use to her. After Sandalwood Fairy put it away, she was about to say something when her expression suddenly froze. She revealed a look of surprise and stared ahead with wide eyes. On the side, Kong Xian was the same. He seemed to have seen something extremely shocking. Lu Ming was a little surprised. He turned around and in the next moment, his eyes immediately widened. In front of him, at an unknown distance, there was a magnificent palace that emerged from the void. It was surrounded by clouds and mist outside, like an immortal palace. It was incomparably huge, but it was full of vicissitudes, as if it had crossed endless years. It seemed real and illusory at the same time. From afar, it was very unreal, like an illusion. What kind of palace is this? It wasn't there just now. Lu Ming was surprised. There was nothing there just now, so why would an ancient palace suddenly appear? Sacred Mansion, it's the Sacred Mansion. Kong Xian muttered to himself, his eyes revealing an incomparable excitement. Sacred Mansion. Both Sandalwood Fairy and Lu Ming were very surprised. This arcane realm was called the Sacred Mansion Arcane Realm, but Lu Ming had never known what it meant. He did not expect that there really was a sacred mansion. Yes, in the ancient books of our World Academy, there is a sacred mansion in this arcane realm, and there is a supreme existence inside. It is said that it surpasses the Emperor. Kong Xian said word by word. His eyes were filled with excitement, as if he was on a pilgrimage. An existence that surpasses the Emperor. Lu Ming and Sandalwood gasped a breath of cold air. In the divine wilderness continent, the Emperor was the strongest. In the eyes of all cultivators, the Emperor was already a supreme existence. Their combat strength was earth-shattering. With a palm strike, they could split the sky and crack the earth, penetrate the earth, and pierce through the sky. It was boundlessly terrifying. The ultimate goal of all cultivators was to become an emperor and dominate the world. But now, there was a figure above the Emperor here. How could it not be shocking? Is this true? Lu Ming asked. Kong Xian shook his head and said, I don't know, but it is indeed recorded in the ancient books. And according to the ancient books, the sacred mansion rarely appears. Even when the emperors could freely enter this place, no one has seen it. It has always been a legend, but now it has really appeared. It is incredible. Kong Xian sighed again and again. He was very excited, and then he revealed many secrets. According to the old legends, there was an existence that surpassed the sovereign level living in this Saint Mansion. If someone obtained the Saint Mansion token, they could enter the Saint Mansion with it and obtain great opportunities. They might even have the chance to obtain the inheritance of that existence. And the Sacred Mansion token was in the Sacred Mansion Arcane Realm. It is said that this Sacred Mansion Arcane Realm has existed for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if it is an existence above the Emperor, it can't live for hundreds of thousands of years, right? Sandalwood Fairy said with some doubts. The path of cultivation was against the heavens. The higher the cultivation, the longer the lifespan. It was already very heaven-defying for an emperor to live for 10 to 20,000 years. It was equivalent to a mortal living for hundreds of years, watching the world change like a living history book. As for the existence above the emperor, no matter how powerful it was, it could not live for hundreds of thousands of years. It was too shocking and unbelievable. Unless it was a legendary god. Legend said that gods could exist with heaven and earth, but that was only a legend. I'm not too sure about that either. Kong Xian shook his head. Even so, their eyes were filled with flames. An existence that surpassed a ruler, this was too shocking. Once one reached such a boundary, one would definitely be all-powerful and unimaginable. If it was true, they would benefit endlessly if they obtained something. Roar! Roar! At this moment, a long howl resounded through the earth. It was extremely shocking. Whoa! The three of them saw a huge silver wolf appear on a mountain peak in the distance. It howled at the sky, and its aura was shocking like a tsunami. With a stomp, the mountain peak collapsed. The silver wolf broke through the sky and flew in the direction of the sacred mansion. Rumble! In the sky, a mountain ridge moved. Upon closer look, it was a giant snake swimming across the sky, heading toward the sacred mansion. Bang! The earth rumbled and trembled. Not far away, a giant ape as tall as a mountain stepped on the ground, causing the earth to crack and the mountains to tremble. Chapter 1080. The land seemed to be boiling. Powerful beasts went berserk and flew in the direction of the Saint Mansion. Along the way, if they saw any human martial artists, they would kill them immediately. There were even powerful beasts that killed each other. Caw! With a sharp cry, the sky darkened as a terrifying pressure pressed down. Oh no, run! Lu Ming's face changed as he rushed to the side. Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian's faces also changed as they followed Lu Ming to the side. A strong wind blew as a giant eagle flew over their heads. Its eyes were as sharp as swords as it glanced at the three of them. With a flap of its wings, a terrifying tornado was formed and swept toward the three of them. Wherever the tornado passed, not to mention trees, even huge mountains were uprooted and swept into it. The scene was horrifying. The three of them ran forward at full speed to avoid the tornado. After the giant eagle fanned out the tornado, it ignored Lu Ming and the others and quickly flew away. The three of them didn't dare to take it head-on. They used their movement techniques to avoid it. After flying for a few thousand miles, the tornado weakened and disappeared into the air. Phew, the three of them let out a long breath. That giant eagle was definitely a beast above the 7th level spirit god realm. It was too strong. They were too weak. It seems that the sacred mansion has really appeared. The powerful beasts in the secret territory have all been alarmed. Kong Xian said. What are you going to do next? Lu Ming asked. We'll meet up with the other brothers and see if we can take a gamble. If we can get a little opportunity from the appearance of the sacred mansion, it will be endless benefits. Kong Xian's eyes were burning with passion. Sandalwood Fairy nodded. A group of people from the Medicine King Valley had also entered. She also wanted to meet up with them. Fairy, why don't we join forces? The Medicine King Valley is good at inscription. The World Academy also has people who are good at inscription and martial arts. Only by working together can we bring out the best in each other. Kong Xian said. Okay, it's decided. Brother Lu, will you come with us? Sandalwood Fairy looked at Lu Ming. No, I have other things to do. I'll take my leave now. Lu Ming shook his head, bid farewell to the two of them and left. The two of them felt that it was a pity. If Lu Ming were to join them, their chances of success would undoubtedly be greater. Then, the two of them left. With the appearance of the sacred residence, everyone in the secret realm was in an uproar. Everyone from the World Academy knew some secrets, and rumors about those above the ruler level had also spread. All the powerhouses who entered the secret realm were extremely enthusiastic. Powerhouses from various forces gathered and headed toward the sacred residence. Lu Ming flew all the way and soon saw a few corpses of ferocious beasts. They were all killed by the ferocious beasts. Lu Ming landed and his devouring power burst out, devouring the blood essence of the ferocious beasts. This was the reason why he had left Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian. Just now, the powerful vicious beasts in the mystic realm had gone on a rampage and killed many martial artists and weaker vicious beasts. Lu Ming didn't want to waste them, so he swallowed them and broke through to the next realm. Along the way, Lu Ming devoured all the human martial artists and ferocious beasts that he saw being killed. Many of them were at the spiritual god level. Lu Ming devoured more and more energy. After a full day, Lu Ming had devoured the energy of hundreds of human cultivators and vicious beasts. Then, he found a hidden place and entered the mountain river diagram to begin refining. The energy of the blood essence was all used to improve the 9 dragons' bloodline. The other energy was all converted into vital essence. Lu Ming began to break through to the second level of the spirit god realm. His current conception of heaven and earth was completely ahead of his cultivation. As long as he had energy, he could break through to the next realm. Boom! Boom! The majestic vital essence gathered in the spiritual god, making it more solid. The spiritual god sat cross-legged in his dantian, his whole body glowing and looking solemn. After a long time, with a rumble, Lu Ming's aura surged. The second level of the spirit god realm. Lu Ming had finally broken through to the second level of the spirit god realm, and his strength had greatly improved. If he encountered Xue Feng now, Lu Ming was confident that he could kill him even without using the 9 seals of the Divine Gate. Lu Ming stood up and stepped out, appearing outside the mountain river diagram. Now I can fight for the Saint Mansion. Lu Ming revealed a confident expression. If it was before he broke through to the second level of the spirit god realm, even if Lu Ming went, he might not be able to obtain any benefits. Many of the previous generation's geniuses had entered the mountain river diagram. Every overlord force probably had an expert like Xue Feng, and there might even be someone stronger. Moreover, these forces had many people. If Lu Ming was at the first level of the spirit god realm, even if he went, he might not be their opponent. Moreover, there was also Yang Padian. The battle strength of the 5 young tycoons was absolutely shocking and couldn't be underestimated. But now, Lu Ming was confident that even if he couldn't suppress all of them, it wouldn't be a problem for him to get a share of the loot. Using the 9 dragons' heaven-stomping steps, Lu Ming turned into a streak of light and flew away. Soon, Lu Ming had flown a few 100,000 miles. So far, where is the Saint Mansion? Lu Ming was speechless. After flying a few 100,000 miles, he felt that the Saint Mansion wasn't close at all. It was still so far away that he couldn't see it. Lu Ming continued to fly, flying a few 100,000 miles. Unfortunately, it was still the same. He didn't feel that he was close to the Saint Mansion. The Saint Mansion was floating in the air like an immortal palace. Boom! Suddenly, there was an uproar in front of him. There were experts fighting fiercely. In the distance, the sky was shrouded in endless light. Various colored lights flickered as terrifying attacks collided continuously. Lu Ming was slightly surprised. He restrained his aura and flew over. Fairy, Brother Kong. Below, there were some figures looking up. Fairy Sandalwood and Kong Xian were among them. Lu Ming flew over to greet them. Brother Lu. Seeing Lu Ming, both of them smiled. What's going on? Lu Ming asked. They're fighting for the Saint Mansion's token. Fairy Sandalwood said. What? The Saint Mansion's token has appeared. Lu Ming was shocked. He didn't expect that the battle in the sky was because of the Saint Mansion's token. High up in the sky, dazzling lights flashed. It was impossible to see the faces of the people inside. Only 7 or 8 figures could be seen crisscrossing and fighting fiercely. They were all powerful and terrifying existences. Even Fairy Sandalwood and Kong Xian could only watch from below, unable to interfere. There were many people watching below. Lu Ming saw Yin Bupo from the Sky Eagle Fort and some other experts from the Sky Eagle Fort. In addition, the Ji family from the Demon Mountain was also there. Everyone stared at the sky, watching the progress of the battle. Bang! Suddenly, a huge figure was shot down and fell heavily on the ground. It was a lightning eagle. Its body was covered in lightning, but there was no aura. It was dead. Senior brother. Im Bupo and the others shouted in anger. Obviously, this lightning eagle was an expert from the previous generation of the Sky Eagle Fort. Swoosh! At this moment, another figure rushed down. Chapter 1081. Senior Brother Luo. Kong Xian's expression changed as he stepped forward. Obviously, this person was an expert from the World Academy. Sigh, I'm no match for them. I don't need the sacred mansion token. Senior Brother Luo sighed. Kong Xian and Sandalwood Fairy were shocked. They knew that Senior Brother Luo was the #1 prodigy of the World Academy. He had awakened a 7th-level divine bloodline and reached the 4th level of the Spirit God realm. He shouldn't be weaker than Xuefeng, but he still couldn't defeat them. The number of people decreased, but the battle became more intense. Terrifying vibrations spread out for thousands of miles. The void was as fragile as a piece of paper. Bang! Bang! Following that, more and more people were sent flying out of the battlefield. 4 people were sent out of the battlefield in succession. They were severely injured and stood in the void, looking at the battlefield unwillingly with fear in their eyes. Lu Ming could see that there were only 2 figures left in the sky, fighting fiercely. Clang! Clang! The sounds of collisions were constantly heard as if 2 gods were fighting. Sizzle! The space cracked and the light faded. 2 figures appeared in front of everyone. Both of them were tall and burly with wild auras. One of them held a halberd in his hand. His black hair hung loosely behind his back, and his aura was shocking to the extreme. Just by standing there, the space around him was like water, constantly twisting and distorting, forming circular ripples. Yang Padian. This person was actually one of the top 5 youths, Yang Padian. The other person stood in front of Yang Padian. His body was even more burly than Yang Potion's, revealing 2 muscular arms. He was holding a huge spiked club. This person looked very young, definitely not more than 30 years old. He was in the same generation as Lu Ming. A prodigy of the younger generation was actually able to fight with Yang Padian. Who was this person? This person is from the Northern Plains and is known as the #1 prodigy of the Northern Plains. I heard that he fought with Yang Padian outside before. Kong Xian explained in a low voice. Lu Ming suddenly understood. So it was a prodigy of the Northern Plains. He had also heard that a prodigy from the Northern Plains fought with Yang Padian to a draw. Between the 2 of them, there was a purple gold token floating in the air, emitting a hazy glow. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. This should be the Holy Mansion's token. Tuoba sure, let's settle this today. Yang Padian held the halberd in his hand. With a slight movement, he cut open a crack in space. His aura was wild. His hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were like lightning. That's exactly what I wanted. Tuoba sure grinned and waved his mace, creating a loud rumbling sound. Waves of energy surged, and the token of the Saint Mansion was blasted high up into the sky. Shwa shwa. At the same time, the 2 of them moved, rushing towards each other, starting a great battle. Yang Padian had also comprehended the will of space, and his usage of it was even more terrifying than Di Shen's. At the same time, he also had the support of other wills. When he struck out with his halberd, it was as if he could sever the void. Tuoba Shi's muscles bulged like an invincible warrior. His mace danced in the air, crushing everything in its path. When it collided with the ancient halberd, a terrifying rumble could be heard. The 2 of them clashed fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of blows. The others gathered around to watch, their eyes filled with amazement. Is this the strength of the 5 giants? They're indeed powerful. Lu Ming exclaimed. At the same time, a strong fighting spirit appeared in his eyes. Sigh, they're too powerful. They haven't even used the bloodline fusion, but they're already so powerful. I'm too far behind them. Kong Xian sighed. Have their bloodlines surpassed level 8 of the divine level? Lu Ming asked. That's right. The bloodlines of the 5 giants of the central continent are all at level 9 of the divine level. Sandalwood Fairy said. They're actually at level 9 of the divine level. Lu Ming was also a little surprised. Level 9 of the divine level was the highest level of bloodline. Each of them was extremely terrifying. The higher one's bloodline was, the greater the difference in the talent or bloodline bonus brought by each level. Level 7 of the divine level was much stronger than level 6 of the divine level. However, level 8 of the divine level was much stronger than level 7 of the divine level, whether it was talent or bloodline bonus. As for level 9 of the divine level, it was even more terrifying. This was because level 9 of the divine level represented the peak and perfection. It was not something a level 8 of the divine level could compare to. If level 8 of the divine level meant that one had the potential to become an emperor, then level 9 of the divine level meant that one would definitely become an emperor as long as they didn't die. In the history of the divine wilderness continent, anyone who awakened level 9 of the divine level bloodline would become an emperor as long as they didn't die. The 5 giants of the central continent were equivalent to becoming an emperor in the future. It was no wonder that Yang Patian was so arrogant. He always acted as if he was above everyone else. He was destined to become an emperor. Apart from people who were at the same level as him, everyone else was just an ant in his eyes. Perhaps in the depths of his heart, he didn't even care about supremes. Clang! Clang! The battle continued and became more and more intense. Both of them were really angry for the Sacred Mansion token. Both of them were determined to get the Sacred Mansion token. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged more than 100 moves. The purple gold Sacred Mansion token rolled around in their energy. Crack! Suddenly, a crisp sound came from the Saint Mansion's token. Then, under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, the token crumbled into pieces. The Sacred Mansion token shattered. Everyone was stunned. Even Yang Patian and Tuo Bashir were stunned. They stopped fighting and looked at each other. No one had expected the Sacred Mansion token to shatter. Wasn't that the token to enter the Sacred Mansion? The owner of the Sacred Mansion was an existence that surpassed the Emperor. How could his token shatter so easily? Impossible. The Sacred Mansion token is indestructible. It can't be broken. This is fake. This is a fake token. Kong Xian shouted. A fake token? Everyone looked at each other. I know. Someone threw out a fake token. They want to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, then reap the benefits. Someone guessed. Everyone's eyes flashed. They felt that it was very likely that someone wanted to take advantage of the situation. Fairy, Brother Kong, how did the token appear? Lu Ming asked. I heard that before this, someone shouted that he found the token. Many people fought over it. Later, more and more people joined in. In the end, even Yang Patian and Tuo Bashir were attracted. Kong Xian explained. So you're saying that no one saw where the token came from? Lu Ming asked. Both Fairy Sandalwood and Kong Xian shook their heads. Previously, when everyone saw the Sacred Mansion token, they fought over it like crazy. Who would have thought that the token was fake? Lu Ming nodded. It seemed that someone was really trying to take advantage of the situation. Damn it! Which bastard did this? If I find out, I'll make him suffer. In Bupo from the Heavenly Eagle Castle roared. The Heavenly Eagle Castle lost a peerless expert because of this. Chapter 1082. Yang Patian and Tuo Bashir's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Someone actually dared to mess with them. They deserved to die. The two of them scanned the crowd with murderous intent, sending chills down everyone's spine. In the end, they did not find anyone suspicious. Yang Patian snorted coldly and left. Tuo Bashir grinned and left as well. Since the Sacred Mansion token was fake, there was no need for them to continue fighting. Then, the people from the other forces left one after another. Lu Ming did not leave. He had his eyes on a person. It was a slightly plump young man. He looked very simple and honest. However, his eyes were darting around and Lu Ming felt that they were somewhat familiar. "Fairy, Brother Kong, come with me," Lu Ming whispered. Fairy Sandalwood and Kong Xian were slightly stunned, then nodded and followed Lu Ming in a certain direction. In front of them, the simple-looking young man was strolling in the mountains. He did not seem to be walking fast, but his speed was surprisingly fast. The three of them concealed their auras and followed the young man in the forest. Fairy Sandalwood and Kong Xian were curious. They did not know why Lu Ming was following the young man. Could it be that Lu Ming had noticed something? After traveling for 10,000 miles, the young man in front of them stopped and looked around. Then, a light flashed on his body. In the next moment, the young man's appearance changed completely. He had turned into a monk. Unscrupulous monk. Lu Ming recognized the monk at a glance. It was the same unscrupulous monk they had met before. Western Desert Holy Monk. The three of them hid behind a rock and concealed their auras as much as possible. Kong Xian transmitted his voice to the other two. They could only transmit their voice because they were too close. If they spoke, no matter how soft their voices were, unscrupulous monk would hear them. Sigh. At this moment, unscrupulous monk sighed, then reached into his chest and took out a purple gold token. The three of them were dumbfounded. Wasn't that the sacred mansion token? It was exactly the same as the one before. My hair, my Buddha is merciful. It's a pity that only a few experts died this time. Yang Padian and Tuo Bashir were not injured. I thought they would both be injured. The monk muttered in a low voice, but Lu Ming and the other two heard him clearly. The three of them looked at each other, especially Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian, whose eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It was actually this fellow. To think that the one who threw out the fake Saint Manor token and started the battle was actually this fellow. Weren't the holy monks of the Western Desert compassionate and merciful? But how could this guy do such a thing? Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian were both in a daze. Lu Ming was better off because he was mentally prepared. He had seen how heartless this monk was before. Looks like I have to do it again. Unscrupulous monk mumbled and revealed a harmless smile. With a wave of his sleeve, he strode away. Lu Ming and the other two stared at each other in bewilderment. In the end, they did not continue to follow. They returned to the place where the battle had taken place and gathered with the people from the World Academy and Medicine King Valley. Brother Kong, why can't we get close to the Saint Mansion? I've flown for millions of miles, but it still seems so far away. Lu Ming was a little puzzled. The Saint Mansion should be millions of miles ahead, but because it hasn't fully manifested, it looks so far away. In fact, we've been getting closer. Kong Xian explained. The World Academy was the most familiar with the Saint Mansion's secret realms. Lu Ming nodded. Immediately, Lu Ming, Sandalwood Fairy, and the others flew in the direction of the Saint Mansion. Hundreds of thousands of miles later. The Saint Mansion token has appeared ahead. What? The Saint Mansion token is mine. Let's go. They heard a series of loud shouts as figures streaked across the void and flew in a certain direction. That monk is stirring up trouble again. Kong Xian gritted his teeth. Let's go take a look, but don't do anything. Sandalwood Fairy said. Everyone flew in that direction. Sure enough, there was a terrifying battle in a place, and corpses were falling continuously. In the forest below, they saw a slightly plump young man with rolling eyes. It was the unscrupulous monk in disguise. At that moment, the unscrupulous monk was running around, picking up the storage rings of the dead. Sandalwood Fairy and Kong Xian's eyelids twitched. Is that really the Saint Monk of the Western Desert? Could it be fake? Sandalwood Fairy's eyes widened in disbelief. That had completely shattered her understanding of the Saint Monk of the Western Desert. It should be real. I've fought with him before, and I used a Buddhist cultivation technique. Lu Ming said. The unscrupulous monk was unfathomable. He was young, but his combat strength was extremely terrifying. Then, Lu Ming and the others left the place because the Saint Mansion token must be fake. It must be the unscrupulous monk who was stirring up trouble. The group flew for millions of miles. A huge mountain peak appeared in front of them. The peak was bare, without any vegetation. It was all rocks. At this moment, the entire mountain peak was covered with inscriptions. It was glowing and incomparably resplendent. High up in the sky, the wind and clouds gathered. The huge palace was faintly discernible, as if it was in the sky, but it had not fully materialized. Thousands of figures stood in the distance of the mountain. They were all the experts of the major factions who had entered this time. Roar! Roar! Terrifying roars could be heard. Dozens of powerful beasts were fighting fiercely on the mountain. Blood chi soared into the sky. Lu Ming and the others were shocked when they saw that from afar. Those powerful existences in the secret realm were coming here, but they were fighting each other on the mountain. Why was that? The roars were endless, and the fighting was extremely fierce. Those who could come here were all existences above the 7th level of the spirit god realm. Howl! There was a wolf howl that was extremely mournful. Lu Ming saw a huge silver wolf that was 100 meters tall. However, its heart was grabbed by a huge eagle and it fell on the mountain peak. Fresh blood seeped into the mountain peak, making the mountain peak shine even brighter. Caw! The giant eagle was not faring well either. Its wings were grabbed by a giant ape, and its wings were torn off. Then, a giant centipede cut open its stomach. All of them were giant beasts fighting fiercely. Giant beasts fell and were torn apart. A giant snake as big as a mountain was cut into several pieces by a giant mantis. However, the mantis head was bitten off by the giant snake before it died. Whoosh! Whoosh! More and more people came, but they all stopped in the distance and looked at the scene in shock. Half a day later, all the giant beasts fell on the mountain. Their blood seeped into the mountain as if they had become nourishment for the mountain. In the sky, the ancient palace was rumbling. Wind and clouds gathered, and it seemed like it would appear at any time. At this moment, the crowd finally dared to approach the mountain. Lu Ming looked over and saw more than 5,000 people. Lu Ming saw Yang Patian, Tuoba Shi, and Di Shen. Junior brother Wu, is he the person you were talking about? Suddenly, a cold voice was heard. A murderous gaze stared at Lu Ming. Lu Ming turned his head and frowned. A group of youths with swords on their backs stood not far away. Some of them were looking at Lu Ming coldly. Wu Qingkong. Chapter 1083. These were the experts of the Sky Martial Sword faction. Senior brother, that's him. His name is Lu Shaoqing. Wu Qingkong said to a man in his 40s. Humph. The man in his prime stepped out and stared at Lu Ming with a cold gaze. Lu Shaoqing, how dare you lay your hands on the people from the Talent Swordsmanship sect? I think you don't need to live in this world. The burly man's aura was oppressive as he exuded a powerful aura. The others heard the commotion and looked over. Lu Shaoqing. Among them, Jing Kongling, Junyu, and Yin Bupo were surprised. They had seen Lu Ming before. They were surprised to see Lu Ming. Isn't that the weakling with a combat strength of 5? Yes, that's him. Did he offend the Sky Martial Sword faction? He's courting death. Why do I feel that Wu Qingkong suffered a loss in his hands? Otherwise, why would he ask the experts of the previous generation to help him? He could have done it himself. That's true. It can't be, right? Is that weakling so powerful? Many people recognized Lu Ming. There were many discussions and various guesses. Lu Ming glanced at the man in his prime and looked at Wu Qingkong. Wu Qingkong, I let you go last time. Seems like you didn't learn your lesson. I'll send you on your way then. As soon as he said that, everyone was shocked. Could it be that Wu Qingkong had really suffered in Lu Ming's hands? Lu Shaoqing, don't be arrogant. You're the one who's going to die today. Wu Qingkong's face was cold. He wanted to chop Lu Ming into pieces. Clang! Clang! The sound of swords could be heard. Powerful sword auras erupted from the bodies of the Tianwu sword sect members. Their gazes were like swords as they stared at Lu Ming. Swoosh! Another tall and sturdy man in the prime of his life stepped out and stood beside the previous man. His aura was astonishing. There are 2 LV4 Spirit God Realm experts. Lu Ming's lips curled into a faint smile. There were 2 4th-level Spirit God experts in the Sky Martial Sword sect. Judging from their auras, they were not weaker than Xue Feng. They should be at the same level as Xue Feng. Oh no, it's them. Brother Lu, these 2 are the strongest geniuses of the previous generation of the Sky Martial Sword faction. Both of them have awakened level 7 divine bloodlines. Sandalwood Fairy said worriedly. Sky Martial Sword faction, don't go too far. If you want to kill Brother Lu, you'll have to go through the World Academy first. Kong Xian stepped forward and stared at the people from the Celestial Martial Sword sect. Although they had seen Lu Ming fight before, and he was indeed powerful enough to injure Xue Feng and force Xue Feng to retreat in a sorry state. But now, the Sky Martial Sword sect had 2 experts like Xue Feng. When Lu Ming fought Xue Feng, it was already very difficult. Facing 2 such experts, he was definitely not a match. World Academy, if you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Within the Sky Martial Sword sect, a robust man at the 4th level of the Spirit God realm spoke coldly and in an extremely domineering manner. What arrogance! From the World Academy, a man in his 30s stepped out, his aura exploding. This was the strongest person from the World Academy this time. He was also the top genius of the previous generation of the World Academy. He was on the same level as Xue Feng. One had to admit that the previous generation's geniuses were too weak compared to this generation. Those who had awakened level 7 divine bloodlines were already the top geniuses of their respective factions. They couldn't be compared to this generation's geniuses at all. The difference was too great. It was as if all the luck had been placed on this generation, allowing it to enter a golden age. Brothers Wu, why don't you count me in to kill Lu Shaoqing? With a cold laugh, a man in a blood-red robe stepped out. It was Xue Feng. Back when he was injured by Lu Ming, he had been waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. Now that he saw Lu Ming fighting with the people from the Sky Martial Sword faction, how could he miss such a great opportunity? Xue Feng, you came at the right time. Let's work together and kill this person. One of the men from the Sky Martial Sword faction said. At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on them. This Lu Shaoqing had offended so many people. It seemed like he was going to die today. At this moment, Sandalwood Fairy, Kong Xian, and the white-robed man from the World Academy all had ugly expressions on their faces. If it was only the Sky Martial Sword faction, they might still be able to put up a fight. But with Xue Feng, it would be difficult. You're all here. You came at the right time. Let's settle this together today. Lu Ming smiled faintly and took a step forward. Everyone was stunned. What did he say? Facing such a situation, he actually said that he would settle it together? Was he crazy? Sandalwood Fairy and the others were also stunned. Brother Lu. Sandalwood Fairy called out. Fairy, Brother Kong, leave this place to me. Lu Ming smiled at Sandalwood Fairy and the others, then stepped out to face Xue Feng and the others. Brother Wu, this kid has a very evil secret technique that can seal people's movements. Let's work together and kill him. Xue Feng whispered to the 2 experts from the Sky Martial Sword faction. All right. The 2 experts from the Sky Martial Sword faction nodded. They had heard from Wu Qingkong about the battle between Lu Ming and Xue Feng. They knew that Lu Ming was not ordinary. Although he sounded strong, they did not dare to be careless. Boom! 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 The 2 experts from the Sky Martial Sword faction and Xue Feng unleashed their powerful auras at the same time. Shocking auras shot up to the sky and pressed down on Lu Ming. Whoosh! 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 The three of them moved and surrounded Lu Ming. The three of them are joining forces to deal with Lu Shaoqing? How can this be? Is Lu Shaoqing's combat strength that strong? Otherwise, why would Xue Feng and the others take him so seriously and need the three of them to join forces? They were not fools. When they saw the three's reaction, they knew that something was wrong and guessed what was going on. They were shocked by this guess. Other than the top 5 young geniuses, who else would be so important to Xue Feng and the others? Kid, aren't you very arrogant? Let's see how you're going to die. Xue Feng's eyes were cold. In the next moment, he unleashed his bloodline and performed bloodline fusion, pouncing toward Lu Ming. Kill! Lu Ming roared. His third bloodline appeared and a wisp of power entered Lu Ming's body, turning Lu Ming's hair blood red. His killing intent rushed out like a tide. At the same time, the 7 dragon powers erupted at the same time, raising Lu Ming's strength to a terrifying level. The third bloodline turned into a blood-red battle sword and was held in Lu Ming's hand. With a slash, a blood-red sword light cut through the void, illuminating the sky and slashing toward Xue Feng. This power, at this moment, Xue Feng's eyes widened and he was terrified. This power was too shocking. It was much more powerful than the last time he fought with Lu Ming. It was much more powerful. Not good. Xue Feng's body turned cold as he tried his best to resist. But with a puff, the sword light slashed through. The blood leopard that Xue Feng had transformed into had one of its claws cut off and was sent flying far away. Xue Feng roared and retreated rapidly. At this moment, the 2 experts of the Sky Martial Sword sect had also arrived. 2 vast sword lights, as large as mountains, slashed toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming slashed out with his sword and destroyed the 2 sword lights. His figure did not stop as he rushed toward Xue Feng. Xue Feng was terrified and retreated rapidly. You can't escape. Chapter 1084. The 9 seals of the Gate of God appeared, emitting light and suppressing Xue Feng. Covered by the light of the Gate of Seal, Xue Feng was frozen in the air. He tried his best to release his true essence, trying to break the Gate of Seal. However, Lu Ming's cultivation had reached the 2nd level of the Spirit God realm, and the Gate of Seal was even more powerful. Xue Feng couldn't break it at all. No, no. He was extremely anxious and kept growling. Swoosh! Lu Ming rushed over and slashed down with his sword. With a bang, Xue Feng was cut in half. Xue Feng's original body appeared, vomiting blood with a deep wound on his chest. He wanted to retreat, but the Gate of Seal was still there. He couldn't retreat even if he wanted to. No, no, spare me! Xue Feng screamed in horror, but what greeted him was a sword light. Pucci! Xue Feng was cut in half. Even the spirit god in his body couldn't escape. It was smashed and turned into ashes. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that many people couldn't react in time. The 2 experts of the Sky Martial Sword sect wanted to save him, but it was too late. How could this be? The 2 experts of the Sky Martial Sword sect were about to launch a fierce attack on Lu Ming when they saw this scene. Their pupils shrank sharply and they subconsciously stopped in their tracks. Hiss, gasps could be heard coming from all around. Xue Feng was killed by Lu Ming in 2 moves. He couldn't resist at all. How could this be? Xue Feng had awakened a level 7 divine bloodline and his cultivation had reached the 4th level of the spirit god realm. His combat strength was absolutely terrifying, but he was killed by Lu Ming so easily. This was unbelievable. Sandalwood Fairy, Kong Xian, and the people of the Medicine King Valley and the World Academy were dumbfounded. They were completely stunned and couldn't believe what they had seen. Wu Qingkong was even more tongue-tied. He was almost scared to death. It had only been a few days. A few days ago, Lu Ming could only fight to a draw with Xue Feng. With the help of the Gate of Seal, he barely had the upper hand. But now, he had completely crushed Xue Feng. In just a few days, Lu Ming's combat strength had increased by a large margin. This was too shocking. It's your turn now. Lu Ming looked at the two experts from the Sky Martial Sword sect. His blood-red hair danced in the wind as his killing intent surged. The two experts from the Celestial Martial Sword sect were no longer as confident as before. Brother Lu, in my opinion, this is all a misunderstanding. One of them revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. Lu Ming, who was surrounded by the three of them, was still able to kill Xue Feng with a thunderous strike. This really frightened them. Misunderstanding? No, there is no misunderstanding. Today, I will kill all of you. I don't need a reason. Lu Ming said indifferently. In the next moment, he took a step forward and rushed towards the two of them like a beam of bloody light. Damn it! Let's attack together and kill him. The two of them roared and unleashed their bloodlines at the same time, turning into two gigantic swords. Without a doubt, both of them had divine-grade bloodlines and had comprehended divine-grade martial skills. Their battle prowess was incomparably terrifying. Clang! Clang! Sword cries rang out as the other experts from the Celestial Martial Sword faction made their move. Unsheathing their swords, sword beams shot up into the sky as they charged towards Lu Ming. Seal! The bloody sword floated in the air as Lu Ming formed a seal with both of his hands. A sealing gate flew out and enveloped one of the gigantic swords. In an instant, the gigantic swords were immobilized. Kill! Lu Ming held the sword in his hand and struck one of the swords away. At the same time, he took several steps and the terrifying power of the 9 dragon sky-stomping steps erupted. Boom! 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 After taking 7 consecutive steps, Lu Ming stepped on the sword that was sealed by the sealing gate. The sword immediately crumbled and Lu Ming's body appeared. However, with a flash of sword light, his head fell to the ground. The spiritual deity of this person flew out from his body in panic and fear. Bam! Bam! Lu Ming's left hand executed the suppressing hell heaven art and slapped out continuously. His right hand held the bloody sword as he executed the 5 slaughter styles. Dang! The remaining 4th level spiritual deity's sword was sent flying as the sword body trembled continuously. The bloody sword slashed out millions of sword beams. The escaping spiritual deity let out a blood-curdling scream as he was turned into ashes by the sword beams. At the same time, a few Sky Martial Sword Sects experts were also killed by the sword beams. Lu Ming turned into a killing god as he charged towards the last 4th level spiritual deity. Run, run, run. At this moment, that person had been scared out of his wits and was running for his life. Lu Ming was too strong. Not to mention other things, just in terms of strength, Lu Ming had completely surpassed him. Coupled with the sealing gate, it was simply unstoppable. Where do you think you're going? Lu Ming stared at him and rushed past. Wherever he passed, he killed a few more Sky Martial Sword Sects experts. In an instant, Lu Ming approached rapidly and formed a seal with both of his hands. Another sealing gate appeared. That sword was instantly immobilized as Lu Ming charged forward. No! Spare me! Save me! That person roared, but the outcome was already decided. Lu Ming caught up and killed him with lightning speed. From then on, the 3 experts who wanted to kill Lu Ming were all killed by Lu Ming. He also killed a few Sky Martial Sword Sects experts along the way. The other Sky Martial Sword Sect members were terrified. How would they dare to fight? They all fled. So strong. The others present looked at Lu Ming in shock. They were tongue-tied and couldn't say a word. Lu Ming's combat strength was too shocking to kill 3 experts in a row. Yang Patian and Tuo Bashir looked at Lu Ming in the sky with a serious expression. Previously, they didn't put anyone else in their eyes except for each other. But now, Lu Ming attracted their attention. Looks like we have another opponent. Tuo Bashir licked his lips with battle intent in his eyes. Yang Potion's eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. Just when everyone thought that the battle was over, Lu Ming didn't stop. That was because there was still one person alive. Wu Qingkong. Wu Qingkong was running for his life in fear. Damn it! How can Lu Shaoqing be so terrifying? His combat strength has increased too quickly. Once we get out, I must ask the experts in the sect to kill him. He must not be allowed to live. Wu Qingkong's mind was filled with venomous thoughts. Suddenly, he heard the sound of something breaking through the air. He turned around in shock and saw that Lu Ming was already behind him. Boom! Lu Ming could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He threw a punch and Wu Qingkong was smashed into pieces. However, Wu Qingkong obviously had a life talisman. With a flash of white light, the life talisman wrapped around him and he disappeared into the air. Lu Ming snorted and flew back to where he was. At this moment, everyone was looking at Lu Ming with awe and respect in their eyes. Too strong. Lu Ming's combat strength was far above the average second-class Sky Prides. His combat strength was comparable to the 5 giants. It seemed that there was going to be another young giant in the world. Brother Lu, Sandalwood Fairy's beautiful eyes flickered. She looked at Lu Ming and didn't know what to say. Oh, I happened to have a breakthrough in my cultivation when I left 2 days ago. Lu Ming explained. Chapter 1085. Outside the World Academy's Jade Wall. The space trembled and Wu Qingkong appeared in a flash of white light. Ah, damn it! Wu Qingkong roared as soon as he appeared. Everyone's eyes turned to look at him. Qingkong, what's going on? One of the Celestial Martial Sword Sect Supremes frowned and asked Wu Qingkong. Wu Qingkong had been killed. 2 of the top geniuses of the Celestial Martial Sword Sect had died in battle. Lu Shaoqing, it's that bastard Lu Shaoqing, Wu Qingkong roared like a mad beast. What? Lu Shaoqing again? Lu Shaoqing is a god of death. First, he killed Sanguinarium of Cold Blood Hall and many other experts. Then, he killed Wu Tsang. Now, even Wu Qingkong has been killed by him. Hehe, 2 of the top geniuses of the Celestial Martial Sword Sect have died in the hands of the same person. How interesting. Cold Blood Hall's face darkened. Why did they have to mention Cold Blood Hall every time Lu Shaoqing was mentioned? Lu Shaoqing again. Why? You're not with Wu Long and the others? The Celestial Martial Sword Sect Supremes asked. Wu Long was the top genius of the previous generation of the Celestial Martial Sword Sect. Wu Long and the others have been killed too. They're dead. Wu Qingkong gritted his teeth. What? Wu Long and the others are dead. Who did it? Did Yang Padian do it? The Celestial Martial Sword Sect Supremes roared, believing that Yang Padian did it. No, it's Lu Shaoqing. He did it. Senior brother Wu Long, senior brother Wu Kai, and Xue Feng joined forces to kill Lu Shaoqing. Who would have thought that they would be killed by Lu Shaoqing instead? Wu Qingkong's face was ferocious as he explained the situation. The scene quieted down. Everyone's face was filled with shock. All of this was actually done by Lu Shaoqing alone. Even with the cooperation of 3 great experts, he was still able to create such a battle record. This was too shocking. Another giant. An elder exclaimed. The people of Cold Blood Hall wanted to cry. They had sent such a god of death in with the people of Cold Blood Hall. How sad. Saint Mansion's secret realm. Buzz. At that moment, the enormous mountain began to tremble. The radiance grew even more resplendent, bringing the crowd's gazes back to the enormous mountain. Lu Ming's gaze also landed on the huge mountain. He didn't devour the blood essence of Xue Feng and the rest because the monarch god was here. If he did that, the monarch god might notice something. Now was not the time to reveal his identity. The light from the mountain became more and more resplendent. Finally, 9 purple rays of light shot out. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, amidst the purple light, a token flew out from each of them. It's the sacred mansion token. Snatch it. There are 9 pieces. This one is mine. Immediately, the scene became chaotic. All kinds of auras erupted and rushed toward the 9 command medallions. There was no doubt that the token that had rushed out of the giant mountain was the real token of the Saint Mansion. Scram! Yang Padian roared in anger. His aura was astonishing. The heavenly halberd in his hand swept out horizontally. Dozens of experts screamed miserably as they were cleaved in half, dying on the spot. Yang Padian made a grabbing motion, and a Saint Mansion token appeared in his hand. His eyes were like lightning as he scanned the surroundings. Everyone was shocked and did not dare to step forward. On the other side, Tuobashir waved his mace and smashed a group of people into meat paste. He then grabbed a Saint Mansion token. The others sighed. They knew that there was no point in thinking about these 2 tokens. This one is mine. Lu Ming stepped out and rushed toward the nearest Saint Mansion token. A terrifying murderous intent erupted. Many people were shrouded by his murderous intent, and their faces changed in horror. They quickly retreated, not daring to compete with Lu Ming. The power that Lu Ming had just created was too strong. Lu Ming reached out and grabbed a sacred mansion token. Yang Padian, Tuobashir, and Lu Ming each had a token. The others did not dare to compete with the 3 of them, so they could only target the others. This was a bloody battle, and it was incomparably fierce. The experts of the major forces attacked with all their might to compete for the tokens. The palace left behind by an existence that surpassed the Emperor realm was too tempting. Even an Emperor realm expert would go crazy if they came, let alone them. People were constantly killed, and corpses fell like raindrops. In the end, the Ji family gathered and obtained a token under the leadership of a LV4 spirit god expert. The World Academy and Medicine King Valley worked together and also obtained a token under the leadership of a LV4 spirit god expert. The Demon Mountain obtained a token. The most surprising thing was that the Emperor God obtained a token with the Space Will. He was so fast that no one could stop him. There was also a monk whose sleeves fluttered in the wind. He had a baby face and seemed harmless to humans and animals. He killed a group of experts with a single palm strike and seized a command medallion. Even Yang Padian and Tuobashir looked at the monk with a serious expression. The Western Desert Saint Monk. Yang Padian murmured to himself. It's that unscrupulous monk again. Lu Ming whispered. The last token fell into the hands of the Floating Mountain sect. As for the Cold Blood Hall, the Sky Eagle Castle, and the Sky Martial Sword sect, they were very unhappy because their leaders had died in battle. Those who obtained tokens were separated into several areas, far away from the others. The others were helpless. Although they were excited, those who obtained tokens were very powerful. Only the Emperor God looked the weakest, but he had the Space Will, so no one could catch him. This is the Holy Mansion token. With this token, you can enter the Holy Mansion. Lu Ming looked at the token in his hand and then injected his genuine chi into it. Buzz! The Sacred Mansion token suddenly trembled and emitted light. A halo enveloped Lu Ming. In addition, there were 3 more halos floating around him. Why are there 3 more halos? Lu Ming was a little surprised. At this time, the others also realized the problem. As long as they injected their genuine chi, 4 halos would appear on the token. One of them would envelop them, and the other 3 would appear. I know. These 3 halos mean that we can bring 3 more people in. That should be the case. I think there's a formation around the Sacred Mansion. We can only enter if we're enveloped by these halos. Some of them shouted and their eyes lit up. In that case, wouldn't there be an extra 27 spots? Many people looked at those who had obtained tokens, especially Yang Padian. Since the Emperor God had obtained tokens alone, they had extra places. Brother D, I'm willing to pay a high price for 3 places. Can I? Im Bupo from the Sky Eagle Castle looked at the Emperor God and spoke first. Im Bupo, you're too greedy. Can you afford to buy 3 places? Someone was unhappy and wanted to buy a place from the Emperor God. Brother Yang, someone looked at Yang Patian and wanted to buy a place from him. Get lost. Yang Patian spat out coldly. Those people could only retreat. Chapter 1086. As for the Ji family, Floating Mountain, Demon Mountain, and the World Academy, they didn't even have enough tokens, so they wouldn't sell them. For a time, only Lu Ming, Monk Wuliang, and the Arch were available. Brother Lu. Sandalwood Fairy looked over. I'll give my slot to Medicine King Valley and the World Academy. Lu Ming smiled. The people from Medicine King Valley and the World Academy were overjoyed. They had 3 more slots now. In the end, Immortal Emperor sold the 3 spots. Unscrupulous Monk was all smiles. Finally, he made a huge profit and sold the 3 spots as well. In this way, excluding Yang Potion's 3 slots, there were a total of 33 people who could enter. Buzz! At this time, the light of the giant mountain was extremely bright, forming a huge beam of light that shot into the sky. The beam of light hit the palace in the sky, making a deafening roar. Rumble! The palace slowly appeared. At first, it seemed real and illusory, but slowly, it became real. After a few minutes, the palace became completely real. It was filled with an ancient aura, floating in the air like a huge city. Whoosh! Yang Patian was the first to move. As if he was traveling through space, his body moved and appeared in front of the palace. He then stepped out and rushed in. Let's go, we can't let Yang Patian beat us to it. The others who had a slot shouted and rushed forward, afraid that Yang Patian would beat them to it. If there were treasures in the sacred residence, the first to enter would naturally be able to obtain the benefits. Whoosh! Whoosh! Dozens of figures were shrouded in a circle of light as they rushed toward the palace. Lu Ming and the others were also among them. In front of the palace, there was a half-open door. Yang Patian was about to rush in. Go! The others also rushed in quickly. Nothing happened. Dozens of people rushed through the door. The others who didn't have a slot looked at each other. I don't think there's anything wrong at all. We don't necessarily need a token to enter. The news about the token is spread by the World Academy. It might not be true. Someone said with a fiery gaze. That's right. I don't think anyone from the World Academy has entered before. It's probably not true. There were others who agreed. Charge! I don't believe it. Some people couldn't hold it in any longer and rushed into the palace. However, as he flew, he suddenly let out a miserable shriek, and his entire body exploded, turning into ashes. The others were dumbfounded. Gulp! Those who said they didn't believe the World Academy just now all gasped and swallowed their saliva. Their faces were pale. If they had rushed forward, they would have been the ones to die. Lu Ming and the others rushed in and found a huge corridor. It was very long and extended all the way to the front. What a strong pressure! As soon as they entered this place, everyone landed on the ground. This was because there was a powerful pressure here, and it was a restricted area. Moreover, not only could they not fly, but the pressure on their bodies was also extremely great, causing their speed to decrease by more than 100 times. This is gravity. Lu Ming sensed it carefully and found that this was gravity. It was 100 times stronger than the gravity outside. Everyone circulated their true essence and stepped forward. However, the gravity was too strong. Their speed was about the same as an ordinary person running. Compared to their original speed, it was a far cry. And this corridor seemed to be no less than 100 miles long. However, since they had entered this place, they could only move forward bravely. Gradually, the distance between them slowly increased. Bam! Bam! Yang Patian walked in front. His body glowed as he strode forward. Then, Tuo Bashir's muscles bulged. Like a wild beast, he also strode forward at an extremely fast speed. In addition, Lu Ming's speed was also extremely fast, second only to Tuobashir. As for the unscrupulous monk, his body was covered in golden light as he walked beside Lu Ming. The two of them came in slightly later, so they were slightly behind Yang Padian and the unscrupulous monk. Behind them were a few burly men. They were the strongest prodigies of the previous generation of their respective forces. Their cultivation had reached the 4th level of the spirit god realm. What was surprising was that the arch-god was also walking beside these people. He had the space concept, so the pressure he faced was much less. As for the second-grade prodigies like Lady Sandalwood and Kong Xian, they were further behind. Everyone strode forward. Slowly, they became more and more accustomed to the gravity here, and their speed became faster and faster. This trip lasted for 2 days. Yang Padian was the first to walk out of the corridor and rushed out. "Stop right there!" Tuobashir shouted and followed closely behind Yang Padian. Then, Lu Ming and the unscrupulous monk also stepped out and walked out of the corridor. Boom! Boom! When they walked out of the corridor, they heard a violent roar. In front of the corridor was a large hall. Tuobashir and Yang Padian were fighting fiercely. The halberd and mace kept colliding, and the roar was deafening. On both sides of the hall, there were rows of shelves. On the shelves were some jade bottles, jade boxes, and chests. Obviously, the two were fighting for these things. This was the legendary sacred abode of an existence that surpassed the Emperor realm. How precious would the things inside be? Without hesitation, Lu Ming and the unscrupulous monk's eyes lit up as they rushed toward the shelves on both sides. "Get lost! You're courting death!" Yang Padian and Tuobashir roared and charged toward the two. Tuobashir attacked the unscrupulous monk. He waved his mace and crushed the void. It was like a mountain range smashing toward the unscrupulous monk. "My hair, my Buddha is merciful." The unscrupulous monk chanted the name of Buddha. His body emitted a golden light, and he looked solemn as if he was the reincarnation of Buddha. He slapped out a golden palm print and collided with the mace. With a boom, he blocked Tuobashir's attack and the two began to fight. On the other side, Yang Padian charged toward Lu Ming. The halberd slashed down, and the space directly cracked. It even turned into the power of space and wrapped around the halberd, making it more destructive. Lu Ming's 5-colored conceptions surrounded him, and the 7 dragon powers were added to his body. His blood-red hair fluttered in the wind. The battle sword formed by the 3rd bloodline in his hand changed and turned into a blood-red halberd. The 3rd bloodline was a drop of blood. It could be transformed into a sword, a spear, a saber, or a halberd at will. It could be transformed into anything. Clang! Lu Ming held the blood-red halberd in his hand and slashed down, colliding with Yang Potion's halberd. Clang! A terrifying vibration was heard. The two figures swayed slightly and then fought again. Boom! 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 In the main hall, the 4 of them fought against each other. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Peak 2nd level spirit god. Lu Ming realized that Yang Potion's cultivation was at the peak 2nd level spirit god, which was not much higher than his. However, his combat strength was extremely terrifying. He was the strongest young expert that Lu Ming had ever met. The 4 of them fought in the main hall. In the blink of an eye, they had exchanged dozens of blows. Chapter 1087. The eyes of the 4 of them flashed. Almost at the same time, they gave up on their opponents and rushed toward the shelves on both sides. They understood that they could not do anything to their opponents for the time being. If they continued to fight, the situation would become even more chaotic when there were more people. Therefore, the 4 of them began to plunder the treasures on the shelves at the same time. Lu Ming waved his hand, and a white light spread out, enveloping the jade bottles, jade boxes, metal boxes, and so on the shelves. They were all put into the mountain river diagram. There was no time to see what they were now. They would put them away first. The 4 of them searched frantically. In just a few breaths, the items on the shelves had been swept clean. In particular, the unscrupulous monk actually put a shelf into his storage ring, which made people speechless. But then, Lu Ming and the others followed suit and put away the shelves. At this time, a few more figures rushed out of the corridor. They looked at the empty hall on both sides and were stunned. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, Lu Ming and the others had already rushed into the depths of the hall. There was a door there. Charge! The experts behind them, including the Emperor God, rushed forward at the same time, following closely behind Lu Ming and the others. After rushing through the door, they arrived at another hall. However, this one was bigger and empty. On the opposite side of the hall, there was still a door, and a faint light spread out. Their eyes lit up, and they rushed in at top speed. It was still a hall, but it was exceptionally spacious. In the air of the hall, there were 4 balls of light shining dazzlingly. They were 4 weapons floating in the air. They were of different colors, but they emitted terrifying pressure. These are ruler spiritual weapons. Yang Padian growled and immediately rushed toward one of them. Lu Ming's eyes also lit up. The so-called ruler spiritual weapons were the emperors of spiritual weapons. Just like the martial emperors of martial artists, they stood at the peak of many spiritual weapons. Ruler spiritual weapons were top-grade level 9 spiritual weapons. Even some rulers might not have them. This was because ruler spiritual weapons had domains that could assist rulers in battle. Even if a ruler came here, he would be envious, let alone them. They immediately rushed towards an emperor's spirit weapon. Lu Ming rushed towards a small fiery red pagoda. The small pagoda looked like it was made of fire jade, and it emitted an astonishing amount of heat. Sovereign spirit weapon. Behind him, the other experts also arrived. When they saw the emperor's spirit weapons, their eyes immediately turned red and were filled with greed as they pounced towards the 4 weapons. One of them pounced on Lu Ming. One of them was a robust man that was over 40 years old and possessed a cultivation at the 4th level of the spirit god realm. The other was an imperial god. However, Lu Ming was 1 step faster. His body was like a stream of light as he appeared in front of the small pagoda and reached out to grab it. However, just as Lu Ming was about to grab it, the small pagoda emitted a halo of light. Lu Ming's grab was actually unable to grab it. Inscription formation. Lu Ming's eyes moved. This small pagoda was protected by an inscription array. However, Lu Ming felt that as long as he spent some time, he would be able to break it. Bang! Lu Ming turned his claw into a palm and slashed at the halo. Bang! The halo trembled, but it was still blocked. At this moment, the imperial god and the robust man also rushed over. The emperor's spirit weapon is mine. The robust man's eyes turned red as he attacked the small pagoda. The imperial god slashed out with his sword and slashed at the halo. After 2 bangs, the halo was still intact. Get lost! Lu Ming shouted coldly as the blood halberd swept out and attacked the robust man and the imperial god at the same time. The 2 of them were shocked and tried to block it at the same time. The blood halberd carried a terrifying murderous aura as it surged like a tide and suppressed everything. With a bang, the 2 of them were swept away by Lu Ming. Kill! Lu Ming stared at the imperial god and charged towards him. He planned to kill the imperial god here. The imperial god was the most outstanding descendant of De. As long as he killed the imperial god, De would probably be heartbroken. Whoosh! The blood halberd pressed down and slashed at the imperial god's head. The imperial god's face was extremely solemn. The space around his body began to tremble like water waves. Great space slash! The imperial god said solemnly. He held the sword with both hands and slashed out. The space tumbled and a terrifying crack slashed towards Lu Ming. This crack had the power to cut through space and could cut through everything. Of course, this was relative. The blood halberd in Lu Ming's hand changed and turned back into the blood sword. With a flash of sword radiance, the space was cut open, including the great space slash. This was the terrifying part of the 5 slaughter styles. No matter what weapon was used, it could unleash its power. This was because the 5 slaughter styles was not mainly about the moves but about the intent. Once the intent was reached, any weapon would be able to unleash its power. The Imperial God's face changed and he quickly retreated. Kill! Lu Ming's blood-red hair fluttered as his murderous aura surged. He stepped forward and charged towards the Imperial God. Clang! The Imperial God tried his best to block, but he was no match. He spat out blood and retreated with a pale face. It had to be said that the Imperial God was strong. He had merged the Space Will, Sword Will, and Golden Flames Will. Especially after his Space Will reached the 4th level, it was even more mysterious and terrifying. His combat strength was even stronger than Wu Qinkong's. However, compared to Lu Ming, he was still a distance away. He was no match for him. Lu Ming's eyes were cold as he closed in on the Imperial God. The Imperial God had no choice but to use the transient step. His body kept flickering. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming formed a seal with both hands and a sealed gate was formed. The Imperial God's face changed drastically. He had seen Lu Ming use the sealed gate to seal Xue Feng and the others and then kill them. Space escape! Dishan roared and coughed out a mouthful of blood. However, his body became illusory. Finally, with a bang, his body dissipated and turned into an illusory shadow. His real body had already disappeared without a trace. No one knew where it had escaped to. Lu Ming looked at the defense line outside the main hall. Just a moment ago, the Emperor God had actually traveled through space and appeared in a main hall outside. What a mysterious space will! Lu Ming's eyes flashed coldly. He did not continue to pursue. There were many opportunities to kill the Imperial God. Get lost! He turned around and rushed toward the brawny man. The brawny man was trying his best to break the small pagoda's array. Lu Ming rushed back and struck out with his palm. The brawny man was sent flying while vomiting blood. The brawny man looked at Lu Ming with a grave expression. On the other side, an expert from each side rushed toward Yang Patian, Unscrupulous Monk, and Tuoba Shi. The experts who rushed toward Unscrupulous Monk and Tuoba Shi vomited blood and retreated. As for the experts who rushed toward Yang Patian, they were trapped by Yang Potion's Space Will and killed in one blow. Yang Patian was not in a good mood today. Originally, he was high and mighty in the central continent. Other than the other 4 of the 5 young giants, no one was his match. However, in this trip to the Saint Mansion's secret realm, Tuoba Shi appeared first. His combat strength was not weaker than Yang Potion's and he fought with him several times. Later, Lu Ming and Unscrupulous Monk appeared one after another. They displayed astonishing combat strength that was not weaker than Yang Patian. Moreover, Yang Patian had never seen them before. This made him extremely unhappy and angry.